been people who have sent me information who used to work for the Archdiocese, who told me that when they were working there, they were aware that when Joseph Maskell was assigned there between 1975 and 1980, which was right after he left Keogh, that he was assigned to the Division of Schools at the Catholic Center downtown in the Archdiocesan building in Baltimore. And that one of his responsibilities was to evaluate foster children for placement. What a vulnerable population to put with that man. Now, I first was told it was part of Catholic Charities, and then I was told it was part of the St. Vincent de Paul Orphanage. I also was told that there were some high school students from either Towson Catholic High School or a high school called the Catholic High School, both in Baltimore, and that these high school students were assigned to him as like a work-study program to do filing and clerical work for him, and that because he was so creepy, they left. Now, I have not been able to find evidence of any of that. So, of course, in my naive head, I wrote to the Archdiocese and asked if they had any information. I wrote to Sean Kane, who is the Director of Communications, and I wrote to David Kingkoff, who's one of the Archdiocesan attorneys. And instead of responding to me, they turned my email over to a woman named Jerry Burkhart, who is the representative for Child Protective Services in the Archdiocese. Now, I've met her. Very nice lady, but I met her at the mediation table for one of the Keogh survivors who had no one to go with her. So, of course, it raised a big ruckus when I arrived because they didn't want me in there with her. But she said, Gemma's my person today. And I thought it's notable that the table where this mediation happens is a large rectangular conference table. And the survivor and their person sit on one side of the table with their attorney. And on the other side, Jerry Burkhart sat between the Archdiocesan attorneys. Now, I don't know about you, but I was intimidated. She's supposed to be the advocate for this survivor. And it was not at all evident that she was anybody's advocate. So she wrote back to me, and all of this has been on the Out of the Shadows page and the Keepers page, and also the page called Who Killed Sister Cathy. And her response was, we have no evidence of any student interns, and we have no records that any children were evaluated by Joseph Maskell. Of course they don't, because it's probably all gone. So I didn't stop there. Her next paragraph was part of a form letter that gave me instructions about how to report sexual abuse to the Archdiocese. Okay, I can feel my blood pressure going up right now because you know what? That's the last thing in the world I would do. I would call 911 if my child or somebody in my family was abused by a priest and let law enforcement handle it. So most of the letter was form letter. And then, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like that. So I wrote back and I included the gentleman again. And I said, turned my letter over to Jerry. So I'm including you in this. And I gave them more information about how I felt and how we all feel, and that 150,000 people worldwide are waiting for some answers. The pages that we're on, Shane, were very supportive of me, but I have yet to get a response. I told them that I had been in touch with Catholic Charities, that I had been welcomed onto both the Catholic High School alumni page and the Towson Catholic alumni page, and that we were pursuing the information because whatever happened down there is a big secret. And it's not going to be a secret. And one former employee told me that the nickname for the end of schools was Pedophile Central, because once the Archdiocese ran out of places to shuffle these priests around, they put him down there so that they were keep an eye on him. Of course, while Maskell was there, he was free to go wherever he wanted in the archdiocese. I also learned from a former employee that he was brought before a tribunal. And I asked a friend what that meant. The friend was an ex-priest, and the friend said it means that it is like a court, but it's a clergy court. So it would involve leaders of the archdiocese who sit in and listen to whatever is going on with this person. And I can't find any documentation of that. So I asked them if they could please provide me with that. So I'm not finished. I'm going to continue to be a thorn in the side of the Archdiocese of Baltimore until they decide that they're either going to stop lying, give up the goods, or I guess they can wait until the Attorney General is finished with their investigation, and then we're all going to say the emperor doesn't have any clothes on. I don't know. I think they could be heroes if they would tell the truth. So the last thing I wrote was just a very short couple sentences that I sent today. And I asked Burkhart, Kane, and Kinkoff if they could please give me an idea of when to expect a response to my last letter with all my questions, and that the world was eagerly anticipating the response, because I informed them that all of my correspondence with them and their responses or no responses are going to be made public. And if I have a voice and people are listening and I have an opportunity to make a difference, and there's not much I'm afraid of, so I'm going to keep on pestering until we get some answers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, didn't they also tell you that Catholic Charities wasn't around during that period of time?
They did. They said that it wasn't around. Catholic Charities is a nonprofit that is connected with the Archdiocese of Baltimore. And what Burkhart said was that at the time that I'm asking about, Catholic Charities was not affiliated with the Archdiocese, and that the affiliation didn't happen until, I believe she said, 1986. However, I have heard from a number of people who actually were adopted by families through Catholic Charities, and that they were from Baltimore, and that it did happen at that time. So I actually have contacted Catholic Charities corporate office, and I did get a response, and I wrote and asked to please let me know what the history of Catholic Charities was in the Archdiocese of Baltimore and what the problem was, and could we find some information. And the woman that wrote to me, I haven't heard back from her yet, but she was very nice. She said, your letter was forwarded to me. What can I do to help you? So I think she thought maybe I was searching for like a biological parent, which I'm not. I mean, we all look enough like my parents to know that we all came from the same two people. But yeah, so I'm waiting on that. And I have gotten a warm welcome on the Towson Catholic Alumni Facebook page, and also from the Catholic High School Facebook page, who are willing to help and are willing to share this information. Now, the St. Vincent de Paul Orphanage is where a lot of children in Baltimore lived. So it's possible that maybe some of those kids came from there. The former employee I spoke to also told me that she knew that Maskell spent time with juvenile delinquents and some kids, maybe like older, not real little kids, in the late afternoons and evenings, especially boys, taking them to dinner and the movies. So how weird is that?
Yeah, that's really weird. The next question, someone would like to know, are there any updates on Edgar?
I don't have any updates on Edgar. I have not talked to anybody in his family recently. I think since his death, which was, I guess it's been over a year now. I guess whatever the police have, they're not going to share with us. If anybody has any information out there, please let us know.
What did the filmmakers think of him? Do you know?
Well, they don't make judgment calls on people. And again, we didn't even know who they had interviewed until we saw the series. I had no idea who else was in it except for the parts I was in. Everybody thought he was creepy. I'm just going to use the word. They were very respectful to him, but they did approach him about the interview. And it's my understanding is they had an idea of what his wife worked. And I think they approached him when she was at work. And he said they could come in and talk to him. And he actually did sign a release form. That's not a non-disclosure agreement. That's something totally different. A release form means that tripod filmmakers could use anything audio or video that was recorded with them. So he did sign it. I would love to see the whole interview, but because tripod, and that's Ryan and Jessica and John was not tripod, but he was our photographer. They sold the rights to Netflix. So they don't have all the footage. And Netflix is certainly not going to provide us. The police could subpoena it, but I would love to know more about each of the interviews. I've talked to John today, and he said he would be happy to give me more of an idea of how that interview went. I think they were there a couple of hours, maybe. So it was more than what we saw on that episode in The Keepers. So that's something we can work on.
Can you tell us, I know that the other day you just met Jess and Ryan in California. What other projects are they working on?
It was wonderful to see them. I hadn't seen them for almost probably 2 years. They have, of course, most of your listeners know that they completed Ask Dr. Ruth, which is about the life of Dr. Ruth Westheimer. And a lot of people don't know that Dr. Ruth was a sniper during the war. She has a very interesting life. It's quite a poignant but humorous approach to her life. And she's so sweet and cute. So that was last year. This year, they have 2 projects coming out. One of them will premiere at Sundance, and it's called The Assassins. And you can look that up. It is a regular length documentary about the 2 women who were accused of murdering Kim Jong-nam in Malaysia. And they actually went to Southeast Asia and filmed that one. So the other one they have coming out is 5 one-hour episodes that will be on Apple TV. And it is called Visible. And it is about the LGBTQ community, celebrities who have come out on television. So they interviewed Ellen DeGeneres, Adam Lambert, one of my favorites, Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, a lot of people we're all familiar with. And so it will be each of their stories. I'm really looking forward to that one as well.
I'm looking forward to all of those. They all sound really good. Recently, I, of course, interviewed Tom. A lot of people wanted to know what your opinion was on if Cathy was killed in her apartment and if Russell and Jerry were involved.
Okay, again, Gemma doesn't know everything, but I don't believe Cathy was killed in the apartment. There were too many people there up until late that evening. The police were there, midnight for the missing person report. And then everybody showed up. Everybody was there early in the morning. So no, I do not believe the apartment was ever a crime scene. The second part of the question about Russell and Jerry, I believe that Russell knew everything that was going on. I don't know about Jerry. I do not think either one of them was involved in Cathy's murder. I think they both cared about her deeply. I think they truly loved her. And I don't think either one of them was involved. I guess what confuses me is that Jerry shared with me that Russell had no idea who might want to hurt Cathy. And if she actually said that, then she was hiding something. I don't know why. And Jerry has a hard time believing that Maskell and Magnus came to see Cathy the night before she disappeared because he thought Russell would have let them know. But I have a feeling she kept that to herself too. Yeah, what do you think?
I think Russell knew about it, knew about the abuse that was going on. I'm sure she assumed that was why Cathy disappeared and was later murdered. I also believe that I don't think Russell would have confided in Jerry because she may not have either known if Jerry could have been involved, she may not have known who all was involved, or she may have also not wanted to get him into trouble or endanger himself or her along with him, especially if Jerry cared a lot about Cathy. Russell probably would have known that if she would have told him, it would have put them both in danger. But I do think that Russell did know about it because I do believe Sharon. And Sharon tells us that the detective asked her that question in front of Russell. So I don't think that Russell would have let that pass without bringing up, why would he have asked you that question?
I agree. And Russ and Jerry were standing there. So I don't know. It's hard to figure.
I agree. The next part also refers to my conversation with Tom. I had mentioned that you had access recently to the missing persons report. A lot of people wanted to know if there were any other details that we could tell them that we found out about the missing persons report.
I am putting the whole report because it now is public information. As I said, it was gotten with public information request in the appendix of the book that I'm writing. What I noticed mostly were discrepancies between what we thought and what is in the report. Discrepancies in terms of time. The report says that the police were called at 11:35, which would have been very shortly after Jerry and Pete arrived at the apartment. I believe the officer was gone by 1 after arrival. The report also says that Pete McKeon found the car at 3. I asked Jerry about that. He said that's not correct. So there are also missing pages from the report. Now, I did not file this request myself. A very generous listener used his time to do this. And when we saw that pages were missing, he requested it again and got the very same thing with the same pages missing. Those are just a few of the discrepancies. Most of it has to do with time. I also noticed that the police identify where the car was found as Carriage Court, and Jerry and we thought the car was at Lantern Court, which are near each other, but not the same place. And most of the neighbors who were on Carriage Court, so they could see the end of the court where it came out onto the street, and claimed to have seen the car there as early as 10:30. So whatever happened to Cathy, I believe happened quickly, and that car was put back there as fast as possible. Personally, I think Billy Schmidt brought the car back and walked back into his front door like 10 seconds across the street. I also have a suspicion that perhaps Cathy was in Edgar's trunk, which was why when he got home, he also got home around 10:30 or 11. His first wife told me. I thought it was early in the morning. It wasn't. And didn't let her open the trunk. So he was gone the whole next day, and she doesn't know why. So I have some suspicions about what happened in that whole 24 hours after Cathy disappeared.
Could you tell what part of the missing persons report was missing?
I know which pages, and I know what I've heard from like the newspapers. The newspapers claim that an airline stewardess was bringing groceries back and forth and saw Cathy sitting in her car. Well, the missing person report says the same woman was either coming in or going out of her apartment and saw Cathy's car with nobody in it. And that was at about, I'm trying to remember, I think that was at about 8:30. So she must have been back from shopping by 8:30. And then whatever happened right after that, and the car was back but put across the street by 10:30. Other people saw the car there at 11 and 12. So we know from a handful of neighbors that it was back well before the early morning. And I don't know why the police didn't see it.
Yeah, I think that's really weird that the police didn't see it.
I do too.
There's a lot of focus put on Masquel. What all do we know about Magnus?
He was probably a follower. I have heard that he was very violent. I know that he suffered from alcoholism. He was also a priest at Archbishop Keough High School. And he actually said the memorial mass when Cathy's body was found, and we had a mass at school. I think we don't hear as much because we probably don't have as many abuse survivors telling about being abused by him. In our podcast, we had Michelle Stanton talk about it. We had Donna talk about it. We had Jean talk about him. Donna is actually the one who was responsible for having him placed on the list of abuser priests in Bishop's Accountability because of her report and her mediation. And the church finally agreed to do that. He asked me yesterday online about doing a timeline. I think that would be possible because since he's on the bishopsaccountability.org webpage, we could definitely, maybe some listeners could do this for us or with us, find his assignments and start a timeline to show at which parishes he was assigned during his time in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. I also know that he taught in Harford County at John Carroll High School at the same time that Sister Nancy Cavey, who was Keough's vice principal for a while, her name was Sister Jalissa. They both taught at John Carroll at the same time. And I also know that for the last 5 years of Magnus's life, that he and Nancy Cavey, who by then had left the convent, that they lived together. So I know she was there with him in the end of his life. He died, I don't know exactly what age, but fairly young. Both he and Masquel died fairly young. And I have heard that Magnus died of illnesses that are related to alcoholism, but I've also heard that he had heart problems and that was the cause of his death. But I do think we could start with the assignments and the years. And if somebody wants to start pulling that information out of the Bishop's Accountability website, we could get that online and people could add to that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I do as well, especially because a lot of people don't hear a lot about him. Did anyone further interview Pete McKeon?
Everybody saw Marilyn Radakovic, who was Cathy Sesnick's sister, call him from her home in Florida. And that was all authentic. She really did talk to him. But you saw when she debriefed with the filmmakers that he sounded like he was reading a script and that he was all over the place. He's elderly and he's still living, but I've tried to contact him and other people have. He's changed his phone number and it's unlisted. And so he's not wants to be bothered. I have heard from people that knew him when he was a priest that he was wonderful. He was a gift to his parishes and that he was a really good person. I know that Russell stayed in touch with him after Cathy died, but we really don't know anything about him since The Keepers was made.
All right. And my last question, if you could find answers on any avenue behind the entire case, what small pieces of the puzzle would you like to know? I'll answer on my perspective. If I could know any small piece of the puzzle, I would like to make a definite connection in terms of photo evidence or multiple people willing to come forward officially to connect Masquel Edgar, and Billy. Because I think that if we could connect those three, that would be an important piece to make. So are there any small pieces that you feel like knowing could help with the case?
I would want to know who Brother Bob is because I find Jean credible and I believe what she has said. I would like to know who abducted Cathy in her own car. And I would like to know the conversation between Maskell and Cathy the night before Cathy disappeared.
Those would be really good pieces of the puzzle. That's a good one.
And they're all concrete, both yours and mine. So I'm almost like I'm dying to have this puzzle in front of me where all the pieces like magically fall into place and everything fits. Right now, it just keeps changing.